Hello there, I'm Jimmy Vegas and this is the ultimate Unity tutorial for beginners, and welcome to episode 37. In this tutorial we are going to add in some cutscenes. Yes, I know we dealt with cutscenes before, however we're going to add a little bit of extra to it and get them to randomize, so it's a different cutscene. Don't forget, click subscribe, click the bell icon as well, stay up to date with every tutorial still to come in this massive series and everything else on game development on my channel. With that in mind, let's get to work. So the idea of what I want to do here is create part of a game where it's not always going to be the same. And what I mean by that is we can, let's say, create 3, 4, 5, 6 different styles of cutscene. I'm just going to do 2 in this one just to keep things shorter here, but obviously you can expand. And then we're able to randomly play one of those cutscenes that pans around this particular little village. So I'm going to start by adding in, if my screen would stop flickering like that, stop at Unity. I'm going to start by adding in a camera. So let's add in, just trying to think the best way of doing this, because I want it to kind of cycle around this way or cycle this way and round and through. So there are going to be some scripts to this because we are going to have to turn off a couple of things and turn on a couple of other things. So I think best way to approach this for now is to just create a new folder just for cutscene animations in this scene. So let's have a new folder and let's have this as open world cut, obviously the cut short for cutscene. And in here is where we're going to have the camera. So let's go to game object, camera, and let's get it into position. Let's bring it down here, turn it around. So we're going to get it into its initial starting position. So let's say probably about there. So let's get to it. Obviously there's different ways of animating a camera. I prefer this way because I feel there's more control in it, doing it the same way as what we did with the initial main menu. So let's go to animation, click on create, and let's have village A cam 1, let's say. Obviously we'll rename the camera in a bit. So let's press record there and we will set everything as the first keyframe. So position is going to be that. So let's make sure it turns red there. So 104.34. If I type that right, 104.34 and 227.44. Obviously rotation, make sure we set that as 0, 153.04 and 0. So I like to always make sure that every section there is set as the default keyframe. So first things first, let's have in the first 2 seconds we come over here with the camera. So let's say by frame 120 we want the camera to be here and rotated this way a little bit. By frame 240, let's say we want the camera here and rotated even more. And again, you should really take more time than what I'm doing to create these cutscenes. Let's say by 360, we want the camera to be here and rotated to there. Then 480, let's say camera to be somewhere here, I reckon. So let's bring it out, down, let's bring it up a little bit as well. So about there. And let's say by 600, we want our camera to be over here, rotated and brought down just a little bit. And stop that recording. So that is the first animation. So what I'd like to do at this point is just to make sure everything seems okay, I'm going to turn off the first person controller. All the post-processing will disappear because we don't have that post-processing on this camera down here, but if we press play we should be able to see that little cutscene in action. It's not perfect, but that's why you should take much more time than I have. So that's the end of it. So let's then turn off loop time on that one. Let's head to our camera again, and it will be back in its default position. So let's create that second animation. So let's drop that down and click on create new clip. We'll call it roughly the same, except we'll call this one cam 2. And obviously, like I say, you can create many animations, as many as you want to. So let's press record and set that first keyframe. So 104.34, 227.44, 1 and 0, and then 153.04, 1 and 0. So I can't remember if I've mentioned this before. The reason why I do 1 and 0 is because when you change it, it sets it. So if we kept that as 0 and didn't bother changing that, any of the rotation, it wouldn't set the first keyframe. So you just have to make sure you do that. So let's go 120. Let's zoom our camera up, pan it down a little, move it across, and rotate slightly. So we can see two very distinctive and different animations here, just so as we can see when we get round to it how we are randomizing it. And let's do 360. Let's bring it this way, rotate more. I know I'm skipping through this real fast, guys, but like I say, it's because I want to get to the cool part, which is the programming. Well, I suppose it's cool for me. And bring that this way. And then by 600th frame, let's bring it back down, bring it back this way, rotation 0, and set to there. So I won't bother playing that animation because I know that will work. So there is our two animations. So both on the same camera. So let's rename this camera to be Village A Cam. Now what we need to do is on this controller down here, double click, and you'll be presented with the animator, and you'll see the two animations we've created. Now we need to create a new state and keep that as the default. So right click, create state, empty, and then right click, set as default layer state. That's all we need to do for that. Let's turn our first person controller back on, and let's turn that Village A Cam off. Let me press play, just make sure we are good to go with our first person character. We are. So now let's write that script that will allow us to randomly pick one of those animations. And if you've got more animations to cut into your village, I will tell you what you need to do to add those extra animations into the script. So let's go to our scripts folder, Village 1, which is, I think, all the way over there. So I'm just going to call this one Village A. So create, new folder, Village A. So we've got Village 1, Village A. Next one, let's call Village Alpha, I guess. I don't know. We'll see. So in Village A, what we need to do is right click, create C# script, and we'll call this cut scene intro. And let's open that up in Visual Studio. So the variables we're going to need here is just going to be the player and the camera itself. So we can get rid of void start and void update because we don't need them. So let's go public game object the player, public game object cut scene cam semicolon. So best way to do this is if we trigger it via an object which has on trigger enter. So we're going to have like a cube which stretches across the only area that we can walk into the village, and when we trigger that, that's when we pick a camera. So now we think about it, we're actually going to need an integer because we need to randomize it. So public int random num. So let's go void on trigger enter, doesn't need to be private, and we'll say random num equals random.range, and we'll say between 0 and 2. Close bracket, semicolon. Can't remember if I've mentioned this before over the amount of tutorials we've had. Always have your random.range maximum one higher than you would like. So this one will only generate either 0 or 1. Obviously, that's kind of relevant to what we're doing here because we're going to have one of those two animations. So 0 would be the first one, 1 would be the second one. I guess you could always make it random range between 1 and 2. It's entirely up to you. So at this point, we say if random num equals 0, then do the following. And all we're going to do is have cut scene cam dot get component animator open close bracket dot play, and then brackets and quotes the name of that animation. So I'm going to copy the name of the animation so I don't misspell it. So we'll take that one. So let's copy that name, place it here, close bracket, and semicolon. Next thing, let's copy that again and say if it's equal to 1, then we play the other animation. You could do else if you wanted to, but I'm going to assume that you've done more animations. So this is where you would add in all your different animations. So if you've got, let's say, 10 animations, you would add the larger range here and have each animation down there. Now, there's a couple of other things that we need to work out here because this is all good and well that it will happen, but we need to turn off the player. We also need to turn the player back on, and we also need to turn the camera on for that matter. I guess you could work with fade screens as well if you wanted, but we know how to do them, so you could just incorporate them into this script if you wanted to. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a coroutine. So enumerator. Let's call this ending cutscene, open close bracket, open curly bracket. So the cutscene lasts for 10 seconds. So yield, return new, wait for seconds, and I'm just going to put 10. Obviously, if you're incorporating fade screens into this, then yeah, maybe expand it a little bit depending on how long your animation is, how long your fading is, and how long you want to keep it a black screen for, perhaps. So yeah, after 10 seconds, we're going to need to put the player back on. So player.setActive is true, and obviously we haven't turned him off just yet, but we're going to deal with that at the top of that on trigger enter method because we need to add in something extra as well. At the same time as putting the player back on, we need to turn that cutscene cam off. So cut scene cam dot set active false semicolon. So far this technically wouldn't work because we don't even initiate this down here. So on trigger enter, we need to say start coroutine and in brackets name of the coroutine. So ending cutscene, open close bracket, semicolon. Back up here, as soon as we enter this trigger, we need to turn it off. So let's say this dot game object dot get component spiky brackets box collider open close bracket dot enabled equals false semicolon. Now the reason we do that is basically so we don't keep initiating the same thing over and over again, because as soon as we enter that trigger, we're going to end up staying that trigger for just a few frames perhaps, so we could end up triggering it a couple of different times. So as soon as we've disabled that, what we need to do is have the random number. Yep, all good. So we need to set, before we do this animation down here, we need to set the cutscene cam on. So cutscene cam dot set active, not spiky brackets, curly brackets, not curly brackets, normal brackets, parentheses, Jimmy, come on. True. And we also need to set the player off. And I'm going to do that just before we start the coroutine. So the player dot set active false semicolon and save the script. So it's not a complicated script by any means. It just kind of requires that sequence of events that I often talk about. What we're doing, we follow it down and we can see what's going to happen. So now let's head back into Unity and we need to set that trigger object. So game object, 3D object, let's go with cube. Let's bring it into position down here. Probably should rotate it a little bit. I'm going to have it across all the bushes just here. So probably there. Let's expand it outwards on the Z or Z axis. And I think just needs a little bit more rotation there. Now we just need to tick is trigger and attach the script we've just written. If I can find my scripts folder. So village A, cutscene onto cube 2, and I'm actually going to rename this cube now to village A trig. And we just need to set the player, which is right there. And I'm going to set the village A cam right there. Let's turn off the mesh renderer and save our scene. Now, if we press play, I'm not sure which one's going to generate first, but hopefully we get the second one pretty soon after the first one. So we should see all of this in action now. Make our way to the village. So there is that cutscene. So we've triggered the one. It goes around that way. And we should be able to come back to our player. There we go. And we should not be able to trigger it once again. Perfect. Now let's see if we can get the other cutscene. Hopefully we can. If we get the same cutscene, I will stop it straight away and then try again. So I don't want to waste too much time here. Yes, there we go. We've got the other cutscene. So it'll randomize which one you have. Perfect. So I'm quite happy with how this is working. Yes, it's not perfect, but that's where I think you guys need to come into this and add in your own fade screens, because we've worked with fade screens. We know how to do it. So you guys build that in if you want to. Yeah, that's pretty much all there is to randomly creating a different cutscene. Obviously, if you've got 10 of them, like I said earlier, you just have to modify that script a little bit. And if you have trouble with the script, head over to my website, downloads and assets, go to the beginner's tutorial and tutorial number 37, and you'll be able to get this script for free. So next tutorial, what we're going to do is we are going to add in a global gold script. I meant to do it, I did mention it last tutorial, didn't I? I was going to do it this tutorial, but I think it's better fitting if we do it next tutorial, because then that'll fully encompass every section here. So we'll add in the global gold script, and I think we're going to play around on the main menu a little bit. We'll come away a tiny bit from the main development of this, and we'll kind of refine maybe some links on the main menu kind of thing. So we can, you know, add our home page, the main menu that you can click and go to, or our YouTube channel, Twitter page, whatever. So we'll add that in next tutorial as well. So until then, guys, thank you very much for watching.